the next player I want to talk about, and this is really probably the last guy that we'll talk about like semi in depth, but we'll go through a lot of guys here too. Jalen Suggs to me is the most interesting guy by far because Jalen Suggs to me is already a better player than the Jordan Poole, Tyler Hero, Emmanuel Quickly group that have gotten paid immense amounts of money. He is one of the best defensive guards in the league, certainly in the top 5. He is growing and maturing offensively. We saw him shoot 39%, 40% from 3 this year. He's continuing to get better in ball screens, but they don't necessarily need him to be elite in ball screens because Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner are already there. This is by far the most fascinating extension negotiation to me because I truly wonder who wields the leverage here, because from a comps perspective, the comps probably say that Jalen Suggs should get like 22, 23 million, but we know that he's a drastically more valuable player than that. I truly don't know what to expect. Like, to me, like, I'm just giving him, whatever is necessary. Like, I'm not, giving him a max, but like, I'm probably going to be, my number is going to be higher probably than what other people's number is in terms of what I'm willing to do in order to get him under contract, because I see him as maybe not the next Drew Holiday, but like somebody in that mold that just really helps me win basketball games through his presence.
Yeah, I mean, it probably doesn't make for as interesting of a show, but I'm in complete agreement with you on this one. I'm not going to counter anything on Suggs. I think the challenge in years 1 and 2 for Jalen Suggs was every time it looked like he was kind of figuring it out, he got hurt. And then he was out for a couple of weeks at the most. And then it was like, we're starting all over again. It all kind of clicked for him last year. I always defer to the idea that when it comes to a potential injury situation, no one knows better than the team because they've got all the information. And that's not information we have. So we have to be really kind of, if there's something weird with this one and you start to hear about it, I'm going to trust the team with that one. And yes, I'm putting my faith in the team that is shepherd Jonathan Isaac through multiple missed seasons and other stuff. I fully understand that. I think with the Magic, there's much like we talked about with the Rockets, they're already in a little bit of a different place just because they're about a year ahead of the Rockets on some of this stuff. They've already got Franz Wagner now on a max deal, locked in. You have Caldwell Pope, but Caldwell Pope's contract's only 3 years. It's not a 4 or 5 year deal. So they could be, he may be there for 2 years and gone for all we know. But we know they're going to have Paulo Banchero on a max deal that they'll sign next offseason. They'll start a year later. So the question becomes, where can we go? Can we afford Suggs on anything close to a max deal and then still build a viable roster behind him, Franz, and Paulo? I think you can get really close because the rest of their books are really pretty clean. You have a lot of guys that are either on very fair contracts, short contracts, or team protected contracts, meaning they can get out of them with relative ease. Or in the Magic's case, it's often a combination of 1, 2, or all 3 of those things. They're really, books are in fantastic shape where it's kind of Franz is the only true long-term money that is sizable on their books, because the next one would be Jonathan Isaac, but the last few years are partial and non-guaranteed that the team has some level of control over. So for all of that with Suggs, I would say I would give him 25, 30 million AAV without question and just run with it, because I think he's, like you mentioned, he's already one of the best defensive guards in the league. He is not at all, he doesn't take away from Paulo and Franz, who they want clearly to have the ball in their hands. They did not sign a point guard this summer when they could have, because they want those 2 guys being the ones who key the offense. He knows how to play alongside them. He's a guy I feel really good about giving a lot of money to for all of those reasons. Plus, there is the upside that if one of those 2 guys is out, or for some reason one of them's not part of the future, I think Suggs can take more on his plate as a playmaker. I think he'll build into a player like that. And then just for anybody wondering with the shooting, yeah, let's see. Was that real, or is that kind of high end? But it's something like let me get it right. 47, 40, 76 shooting splits. That's pretty good. I feel really good about that. I maybe 40 might be a little higher. I don't think he's going to
Yeah.
dip much below like 37 or so. And even that would be pretty good given everything else he puts on the table.
Yeah. So, for instance, here in terms of Suggs, Brian K in the YouTube comments, shout out to people on YouTube. Go subscribe over on YouTube, by the way. Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. He says Suggs will never crack top 40 players, but I bet he cracks top 60. His archetype is very valuable. So, what I would say is that he was 42nd last year in estimated wins added, according to the EPM model. Like, look, I don't think I would say he's a top 40 player in the league by any stretch. Like, I'm probably like the biggest Jalen Suggs fan that you will find. And I don't think I would say that even still, but the numbers say that he's already like damn near that level in terms of value. Again, the offense I think needs to come along. I think he needs to get his footwork down in ball screens. I think he needs to continue to kind of work through not just the decision making in terms of turnovers, but just being able to kind of slow down. It feels like he's always so sped up. He's always trying to, get them really moving in transition. So when I watch him, I think that you can get guys to slow down. Like, I think that you can kind of teach those players what you need to in order to, especially when they've shown growth already in the way that he has in his third season. I would have no problem really giving him 30 million. I understand that, that might not be super popular, but like, I think he's a better player than like the Devin Vassell group. Honestly, like, so Jaden McDaniels to me is probably the comp.
Yep.
Here,
That's
right?
it. That's exactly where I go. Different positions, but very similar roles.
Yeah, like different position insofar as Jaden is much bigger, but honestly, Jalen has shown more offensively than Jaden has at this point in his career. I kind of would default to that number, maybe a little bit higher, given the way that we know the salary cap is going to inflate over the course of the next few years, as opposed to when McDaniels did his deal. We had some questions, not many, but we had some questions on where exactly it was going to move up to. So look, I think this is easy. I think you extend them. I think it just looks like something like 4 years, 120, and maybe you try to get some protections in there in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, this one just feels kind of easy to me.
Yeah, I would not even kill the Magic if they did. If it was like that's just not getting it done. If they did like a modified version of what I now call the Desmond Bain, which is it's a max, and I'm putting that in quotations for anyone just listening, where it is a max deal, but there are incentives to get there. It maybe you make the
Yeah,
incentives based around the shooting percentage, right? You have to take X amount of threes per game and you have to make X amount of threes per game. That was very famously the Spurs did that in Derek White's contract. That was one of his
yeah,
things. And I don't know that anybody ever thought he was going to make them, but guess what he did? The last couple of years, he hit those markers.
yeah,
So I think that's where you could kind of go with Jalen Suggs is if you needed to plus it up a little bit. Yeah, 30's the base, but we could get you a little bit more, right? We can, you're limited in how much of a contract can be incentives. So it can't be like you can get 10 million more, but it could be
yeah,
like, hey, you can get a few million more if you hit these markers. I think you could, build something there that becomes very reasonable. And then if he's hitting them, you feel even better about paying it out. It's like
right.
a bunch of people said, why did they put the all NBA stuff in Franz's deal? Is Franz even going to make all NBA? And if he does, then you have to pay him more, but you're paying an all NBA player. So then you feel fine
Yeah,
about it. You don't have, I rarely have any issue with putting those in the rookie scale extension. The veteran
yeah,
extension, I get a little more queasy about because then he may have one more all NBA year in him. He may not have four. Then the
yep,
years 2 through 5 could get real messy. But off a rookie scale, I'm like, oh, you made all NBA when you're 22? Awesome. Let's go. I'm happy to give you 30% of the cap.